a multiple choice question from the exam paper in 2014-15. It's actually question 7. So a few people have asked me how to answer this, and the question gives you a difference equation. It gives you this difference equation, and it asks for the step response. So it's asking for the output if the input were a step. So the first thing we do is we take the step response and we find the transfer function. So that's easy. We simply rewrite it as such by taking the z transform of each of these terms. Then we rearrange, so y of z over x of z equals 1 over 1 minus 0.6 z to the minus 1. If you multiply by z over z, that gives you the transfer function as z over z minus 0.6. So that's step 1. Now we have the transfer function. Now the question is asking for the step response. So it's if the input was x of z, the output would be y of z. And that y of z would be equal to the product of the transfer function and the input. Now, if that input happened to be a unit step, then this would be the step response in the z domain. So, what's a unit step in the z domain? It's z over z minus 1. So x is z over z minus 1. So the output will be simply be h of z multiplied by x of z. So it'll be z over z minus 0.6 multiplied over z minus 1. So this is my step response in the z domain. We need to find that and then convert that to the time domain by finding the inverse z transform. So let me write that out more neatly. So y of z equals z times z over z over minus 0.6 z minus 1. I can rewrite that like this, and I can say, well, that's a over z minus 0.6 plus b over z minus 1. So if I can simplify y of z into partial fractions, I can then use the table to find y of n. So now what we need is partial fractions. So we can say a times z minus 1 plus b times z minus 0.6 equals z. And I can say, well, if z equals 0.6, then minus 0.4a equals 0.6, and a equals minus 6 over 4, or we can write that as minus 3 over 2. And if z equals 1, then 0.4b equals 1, so b equals 1 over 0.4, we can write that as 5/2. So now we have A and B. We can substitute these back into this expression here. And I can say y of z equals minus 3/2 z over z minus 0.6 plus 5/2 z over z minus 1. Notice I multiplied by z again to get these z's up there. Next step is to find y of n, because y of n, that's the step response that we're trying to find. So we need to find the inverse z transforms of these terms. So from the table, z over z minus a gives you a to the power n, and z over z minus 1 gives you u to the power n. Sorry, u of n, unit step. So that's minus 3/2 times 0.6 to the power n u of n plus 5/2 u of n. So we can rewrite that as 5/2 into 1 minus 3/2 times 2/5 times 0.6 to the power n u of n. And 0.6 is just 3/5, so I can actually rewrite that as 3/5. So that cancels with that, and I've got 3/5 there, 3/5 there. I can now write my final answer as 5/2, 1 minus 3/5 to the power n plus 1 u of n. So that is my step response. That's what I've been trying to find. That's not the only way to do it. We could have done a discrete convolution, but this is probably the least difficult way of doing it. Now, this was actually a multiple choice question in the exam. So if I remove that, these are the options available, and that's your option there, because 0.6 is just 3/5. So that's your final answer.